The hideout. The old barn had been abandoned since the 70s. Everyone in Hollow Creek knew that. Cracked beams, a collapsed roof, rusted tools strewn like frozen bones. So when 5 college students picked it for their Halloween hide-and-seek dare, it felt perfect. "One rule," said Mason, the one who thought it up. "No phones, no lights. Just you, the dark, and your hiding spot." Lena, shy and quiet, didn't want to play, but she followed the others inside. Mason clicked the timer on his watch. "You've got 30 seconds, then I come looking." The group scattered into the shadows. The game had begun. Lena crawled into a narrow crawl space under a broken workbench. Cobwebs brushed her cheeks. She forced herself to breathe slow, calm. It's just a game, she thought. Outside, boards creaked as Mason counted. 27, 28. Then she heard it. Another voice, whispering. Behind her. Not Mason, and it wasn't counting. She turned her head. Nothing. Just blackness. Until 2 pale fingers slid through the crack in the wood. Long, crooked, wet. She didn't scream. She couldn't. Her body locked up in terror. When she blinked, the fingers were gone, and so was the light outside. Mason began searching. First, he found Sarah, hiding behind a hay bale. Then Wes in the loft. They laughed, joked, but something was off. "Where's Trevor?" Mason asked. No one answered. They searched, called his name. No response. Sarah found Trevor's hoodie hanging from a hook, but it was dripping wet and smelled like rot. "We should stop," Lena said, her voice shaking. "There's something—" Before she could finish, the barn door slammed shut and locked. They saw him on the 2nd floor. At first, they thought it was a scarecrow, someone's prank, a tall, hunched figure in old overalls, face covered in sackcloth, stitched with wire. But then it moved. Jerky, wrong, like it had too many joints. It stepped toward them, its feet not touching the floor. "Who the hell is that?" Wes yelled. Mason pulled out a pocket knife. "I don't care. Back off." The figure pointed at them with one long nail, then vanished. Wes screamed because something yanked him upward into the rafters. The others backed into the corner, shaking. Blood dripped from above. Sarah was the one who remembered the story. "There was a guy who lived here," she whispered. "In the 60s. A drifter. They say he wore a sack on his face and kidnapped kids who trespassed." Mason scoffed, but his hands were shaking. "They called it the hideout because no one ever found the bodies. Just their hiding spots. Like the kids just never came back." Lena stared at the boarded-up windows. What if he never left? The barn creaked again. This time it laughed. They tried to escape. The back door was gone, literally gone, like it had never been there. The ladder to the loft collapsed when Mason climbed it, sending him crashing onto a rusted pitchfork below. Blood pooled under him. He didn't move. Sarah ran. She didn't get far. She reached the cellar stairs, only to be pulled down into the darkness by something with too many arms. Only Lena was left, alone. She found herself back in the crawl space, heart pounding. Whispers filled the barn. The voice said her name over and over again, like it was tasting it. "Lena, Lena, Lena." Then the voice changed. It became her voice. "Come out, Lena. You're it." She held her breath. In the shadows, the sack-faced man knelt down beside her. This time, she saw what was beneath the cloth. No face at all. Just an empty hole where skin should have been, filled with black smoke and buzzing flies. He reached toward her and stopped. "Why didn't you scream?" he asked. His voice wasn't angry. It was curious. "I saw you first," Lena said, her voice small. "Under the bench. You reached for me." The thing blinked, somehow. "You were the first to see," it whispered. "The first who didn't run." "I wanted to hide," Lena said. He smiled. "You did." The barn groaned. Walls folded inward. The air thickened like syrup. "You hid so well," he whispered, "that even the world forgot you." And then Lena disappeared. No body, no scream, just silence. The Hollow Creek Sheriff's Department launched a search. The barn was surrounded. Drones flew overhead. Dogs sniffed the area. But there were no signs of Lena, Mason, Sarah, Wes, or Trevor. Not even blood. Only a strange ring of disturbed dirt inside the barn, in the exact shape of a spiral. And 5 pairs of shoes lined neatly in the center, untouched by time or weather. Sheriff Dalton shook his head. "Kids play dumb games. They go missing. It happens." But that night, as he locked the barn doors himself, he heard someone whisper his name. Dalton. He never told anyone. Across town, in a coffee shop near the college campus, a group of freshmen huddled over a laptop. The missing student's case had gone viral. Reddit threads exploded with theories: serial killer, cult, alternate dimension. A user named HideMe72 posted something different. "They played hide and seek in the Hollow Barn. The place is cursed. If you play the game wrong, you vanish." Most ignored it, but not Erin. She was a journalism major, and more than that, she wanted to be famous. "If it's real," she said to her friends, "we'll prove it. Get footage, interviews. We could blow this wide open." Cameras, flashlights, a live stream. They chose October 30th. Erin, her best friend Jay, her girlfriend Danny, and 2 others, Tommy and Brooke, arrived at dusk. The barn hadn't been touched. Dusty, cold, silent. Inside, the spiral of dirt was still there. But something was different. The spiral was wider now, and seemed to pulse, like it was breathing. Jay set up the live stream. "Okay, we're on. Hide and seek. 30 seconds. Ready?" They began the game. Just like before, except this time, the barn locked itself. Danny hid behind the rusted tractor. Erin squeezed into the grain chute. Tommy tried to climb to the loft, but the air turned heavy. He stopped halfway up. Behind him, he heard a voice. "Wrong way." "Tommy." He looked down. Brooke wasn't there anymore. Just something else. It wore her face, but its mouth was too wide. Its fingers were bones. Its eyes were pure black. He tried to scream. The thing crawled up the ladder like a spider, and the stream went dead. Erin waited in the dark. She counted the seconds in her head, but minutes passed. Nobody came. She finally crawled out, and that's when she noticed it. A door she hadn't seen before, tucked behind stacked hay bales. She opened it. A hidden room. Inside, every wall was covered in handprints. Small, large, smeared in ash. Names were carved into the floorboards. Lena, Mason, Sarah, Wes, Trevor. and at the bottom, a new name being scratched by an invisible hand. Erin. She turned to run, but something grabbed her arm. In a flash of cold light, Erin found herself in a place that wasn't the barn anymore. Endless halls, flickering lights, air buzzing like static, doors leading nowhere. And behind one of them, Lena, or what was left of her. "Don't play the game," Lena rasped. "It doesn't end." Erin stepped back. "You're one of them." "No, I'm stuck. We all are. It feeds on the lost, the forgotten." "Then how do I stop it?" Lena's eyes filled with tears. "You can't." Back in the barn, Danny realized something was wrong. Jay was gone. So was the live stream. The spiral of dirt had grown larger, swirling faster, like it was alive. She picked up the camera and ran. But every time she reached the door, she was back at the spiral, trapped in a loop. She screamed. The walls whispered back, "You're it." A voice, Erin's, echoed from the hidden room. "Danny, don't trust anything you hear." Danny turned. Erin stood in the doorway, except she had no eyes. The ground cracked. The spiral split wide like a mouth. Screams came from below, not just theirs. Hundreds of voices. Erin, Lena, Danny, all pulled toward the center. From the pit rose the sackcloth man, now towering, made of the memories of those who were lost. Faces rippled across his chest, whispering, begging. He reached for Erin. She threw the camera into the spiral and screamed, "If you're watching this, don't come here." The screen went black. 2 days after the live stream went dark, a Reddit user named Ash into Ashes uploaded a shaky, distorted video clip titled, "They're Still in There." It was only 11 seconds long. A spinning spiral of dirt. A scream. Then a face pressing into the camera lens. Not at the lens, but from inside it. The flesh rippled, like it was screaming to be let out. The video was taken down within the hour, but not before it was downloaded, reposted, shared, and watched by thousands. Some viewers reported blackouts. Others heard whispers at night. 3 of them disappeared within a week. Detective Ellis was retired, 23 years on the Hollow Creek force. But after the second group of kids went missing, and the federal investigators left with nothing, Ellis came back. He knew the barn, he knew the legend, and he knew someone had to break the chain. What most people didn't know? Ellis had been there before, in 1982, when he was just he and his cousin Rachel went into the barn on a dare. Only he came out. Rachel was never found. The barn was condemned the next day. Ellis had never returned, until now. Ellis studied the barn's floor. The spiral was massive now, nearly 30 feet across, etched into the ground like it had been branded into the earth. He saw something else too, the outline of hands dragging themselves toward the center, as if people were pulled in against their will. He stepped into the spiral. Time slowed. Sound changed. It was like stepping into a memory, except it wasn't his. It was hers. Lena. He saw her in flashes. Lena's eyes wide, her fingernails torn from clawing the floor, her voice echoing in his mind. "You can't fight it," she whispered. "It feeds on the forgotten. Those who vanish. It takes your name first, then your face, then your soul." Ellis's heart thudded in his ears. A hand. Not Lena's. Something older. "Join us," it gurgled. Ellis kicked free, stumbled out of the spiral. And as he looked up at the barn's rafters, he saw dozens of faces hanging from the beams. All skin, no bodies. Ellis began researching. The barn was built in 1889, originally a church. The preacher who founded it, Elijah Harrow, claimed he could cleanse sin by hiding it. He performed strange rites, covering his face with sackcloth, speaking in tongues, burying parishioners in the woods to let God sort them. When they tried to arrest him, he set the church on fire. They never found his body, but ever since then, anyone who played hide-and-seek in the place vanished. The preacher had become part of the spiral. Ellis found someone who'd survived recently. Brooke, one of the students from Aaron's group. She was in a psychiatric facility 3 states over, eyes blank, catatonic. Except when Ellis whispered the word, spiral. Then she blinked, sat up, and spoke in someone else's voice. You hid, you saw, you escaped. Now you bring more. The spiral is grateful. Ellis felt cold sweat run down his back. Where's Aaron? He asked. Brooke smiled, her own voice now. In there, with the others, still playing. Ellis broke into the old Dellingham Historical Society archives. There, in a sealed glass case, he found it. The Harrow book, filled with symbols, rituals, summoning circles, and one page with the title, To Close the Spiral, a seeker must burn from within. It described a ritual to collapse the spiral, but it came with a cost. One who had touched the spiral had to willingly enter it, bind the names of the forgotten, and offer themselves in place of the hunger. No return, only fire. Ellis folded the book, packed his bag, and headed back to Hollow Creek. October 31st. Ellis stepped into the barn with a lantern, the book, and a lighter. He poured salt in a ring around the spiral, whispered each of the missing names: Lena, Aaron, Mason, Sarah, Rachel. The spiral answered, with screams, hands, faces, smoke, all rising from the pit, and one figure climbing out, the sackcloth man. But now he wore dozens of faces stitched into his skin. Some still moved. Ellis lit the match. I was always supposed to come back, he said. Take me. The spiral howled, but the man stepped aside. You were already chosen, he said. And from the shadows, Rachel walked out, still the same age she was in 1982, eyes black, smiling. Ellis Brandt didn't flinch when Rachel stepped from the shadows. Her face hadn't aged since 1982, a little girl in pigtails and overalls, except her eyes were void black, and her mouth was stitched shut with hair. He dropped the match into the spiral anyway. Flames burst around him, but the spiral didn't burn. It opened. A howling wind rose from beneath the earth. Smoke, ash, screams. The barn twisted inward, warping, bending like paper melting in heat. The floor cracked. Ellis fell. Down, down. He landed in black water. There was no sky, only a white ceiling far above, like the inside of an enormous rotted shell. Floating islands of wood and broken beams drifted past, carrying pieces of the barn, and people, trapped, screaming, mouthing words with no sound. Ellis pulled himself onto one of the drifting platforms. He wasn't alone. A girl sat cross-legged in the center, tracing spirals in blood on the wood. She looked up. Been waiting, she whispered. You fell into the hollow, Lena explained between breaths. This is what the spiral leads to. It's not hell, not heaven. It's what's left when no one remembers you. All around them, Ellis can see it. Faces rising from the water, eyes wide with pleading, then fading again. Some still looked like students. Others were nothing but skin, floating like forgotten names. I tried to count the days, Lena said. But time bends here. I think Aaron's still alive. She went deeper. Why didn't you leave with me? Ellis asked. Lena looked away. Because once you're part of the game, you can't go back unless someone remembers you. Ellis swallowed hard. And that's when the water started to boil. Something massive stirred beneath them. A shape, no face, just limbs, countless limbs. The Forgotten One. It rose from the hollow, like a god made of those who'd vanished, skin stitched with memory, mouths whispering names over and over again. Who is that? Ellis asked. Lena whispered, the first one who played the game. The platform shattered. They swam through the blood-warm water as arms reached for them, claws dragging at their clothes, eyes embedded in palms blinking. Ellis found a rusted bell tower, half submerged, and climbed it with Lena. Safe. For now. And then a voice called out from inside. Ellis? He turned. Aaron. But she was different. Older, stronger, and she had the Harrow book in her hands. Aaron had found a door. At the center of the hollow floated an enormous stone arch, carved with thousands of names, all the lost, the vanished, the devoured. It pulsed with red light, and from within came a constant hum, like thousands whispering secrets all at once. Aaron spoke fast. I've been down here for weeks, month. I don't know. But this door? It's the heart. If we close it, we collapse the spiral. How? Ellis asked. She opened the Harrow book. There's a final rite. It needs 3 things. A name that's been forgotten, a memory that was erased, and a sacrifice who chose to come here willingly. Lena looked at Ellis. You fit all 3. Ellis stepped forward. He took Lena's hand. I was supposed to protect you, Rachel, all of you. Aaron drew the symbols in ash. The Forgotten One screamed in the distance, rising from the water again, now with Rachel's face stitched into its chest. It began crawling toward the door. Ellis stepped into the spiral drawn on the stone. As Aaron chanted the rite, the water around them began to rise. And Ellis saw something, his own memory. He and Rachel, in 1982, playing in the barn, her hiding, him cheating, leaving her behind. Now he remembered. I'm sorry, he whispered. He placed his hand to the stone door, and the hollow burned. The hollow split. Water drained like blood down a drain. The Forgotten screamed. Faces peeled from the air, unstitched, released. Rachel smiled one last time before fading like smoke. Lena screamed Ellis's name as he vanished in light, and the door slammed shut. Lena awoke in a field, alone, cold. The barn was gone. In its place, a black scorch mark in the dirt. She stumbled to the road, where a car pulled over. A woman stepped out. Are you okay? Lena nodded, too weak to speak. In her hand, she held one thing, Ellis's sheriff badge. Weeks later, Lena sat in a hospital room. Reporters camped outside. Police questioned her for hours. But one detective, an old woman with silver hair and a quiet voice, Ask something else. Do you remember the names? Lena looked up. I remember all of them. The detective nodded. That's how you keep them alive. On her way out, Lena saw a little girl in the hallway. Brown pigtails, a red dress. Rachel. But this time, her eyes were normal. She smiled, then vanished. Lena hadn't slept through a single night since returning. Every time her eyes closed, she found herself back in the spiral. Not as she left it, but as something changing. A hollow city sinking into black oceans. A tower rebuilt from teeth. And Ellis, standing at the edge, screaming without a mouth. When she woke, her pillow was damp with blood. She'd bitten through her tongue again. It wasn't just Lena. People in Hollow Creek started seeing things. Children said a scarecrow walked between the fields at night, one with no face, dragging a lantern that never lit. Farmers found spirals burned into their crops. A woman on the outskirts of town went missing, leaving only her shoes in the center of a circle of dirt. The sheriff claimed it was all rumors, but Lena knew better. The spiral hadn't closed, it had moved. One night, Lena stared into the shard of glass she'd found at the ruins. It flickered. And then Ellis appeared. His face was gaunt, stitched together like he'd been sewn by memory. He mouthed words. Lena could almost hear them this time. It's not just me in here. Then he stepped aside, and behind him she saw a child, face wrapped in linen, fingers made of wire, mouth stitched shut. "Who is that?" Lena asked aloud. The shard vibrated. A new word echoed in her skull. The first. Lena went back to her notes, her dreams, the Harrow book. She remembered what Ellis had said. The preacher was just the beginning. Elijah Harrow had a son, Jonas, hidden from the church, locked in the spiral after death, a child who had never been named. He was the first to vanish, and the spiral had been feeding on him ever since. That's why the spiral couldn't be destroyed. He was still dreaming it. The spiral was no longer confined to the barn. Shards of black mirror began appearing all over Hollow Creek. One found embedded in a school wall, another beneath a child's bed. Each shard whispered to Lena at night, "Feed us, play again, finish what he started." And sometimes, Ellis is waiting. The people who looked too long into the shards, they went missing. Determined to end it, Lena followed the spiral's trail through the fields. There, at the center of the largest spiral burned into the wheat, she dug with her bare hands. Bloodied and desperate, she uncovered a wooden hatch, old and sealed shut with iron. When she opened it, cold air poured out, air that smelled like rot and forgotten things. A ladder led down into the dark. As she descended, the hatch sealed itself shut above her. She lit her flashlight. The walls were stitched with names, the names of every person who had ever vanished into the spiral. At the bottom stood a mirror, and in the mirror was Ellis. Ellis looked hollowed out. His skin hung loose, his eyes wide with fear. He pressed his hand to the glass. "I tried to hold it," he whispered, "but it's breaking through." "What is?" Ellis turned, and from the darkness behind him stepped Jonas Harrow. The boy was no longer a boy. He had no eyes, only sockets that bled spirals. Where his chest should have been was a void that sucked light inward. He tilted his head at Lena and spoke. "You brought more." Lena stepped back. But there was no exit. Jonas raised one hand. The mirror exploded outward, and Lena fell into the tower beyond. She hit the ground hard. Ellis grabbed her, pulled her behind a collapsing wall. "You shouldn't have come," he shouted. "I had to," she replied. "He's not done." Above them, the tower began to collapse inward, folding like a dying flower. Jonas stood in the center, arms outstretched. Names floated around him, names of the living. Lena's name. So was Ellis's. So was everyone in Hollow Creek. He was calling them, and one by one, they began to vanish from their homes. The first to vanish was Pastor Jim, right in the middle of Sunday Mass. One moment, he stood at the pulpit, reading from the book of Revelations. The next, gone. His Bible dropped to the floor, pages fluttering like frantic wings. By the next day, 12 more people were missing, including 3 children. All had one thing in common. They had recently dreamed of the spiral. Some said they saw a boy with no mouth. Others described a whispering glass. The sheriff boarded up the ruins of the barn, but it didn't matter. The spiral had already moved into them. Inside the spiral realm, Ellis and Lena sat in a crumbling chamber of stone, watching shadows slip past cracked glass windows. The city below churned like it was alive, streets shifting, doorways disappearing, voices crying out with no mouths to form them. Ellis rolled out a scroll he'd taken from the Harrow Tower. It was a map, not of the spiral, but of Hollow Creek. Red dots marked the missing. New ones glowed now. "They're being pulled in," Ellis muttered, even though the tower collapsed. "It's Jonas," Lena said. "He doesn't need the tower anymore." Ellis traced a line across the map. A spiral formed at the center. And at the heart of that spiral, the Harrow House. Back in the real world, the Harrow House was long abandoned. A rotted Victorian on a hill where no bird sang and even weeds refused to grow. Lena emerged from the hatch she had entered and made her way to it. Though years had passed, the house looked fresher, like it had been rebuilding itself. She stepped inside. The floors sighed like lungs beneath her boots. The spiral was carved into every inch of wood, in the grain of the floors, the cracks of the walls, the dust in the air. At the top of the stairs sat a child's chair, slowly spinning. She turned it. There was a mirror in its seat, and from it, Ellis reached through, pulling himself back into the world. But not alone. Behind him, Jonas followed. Jonas Harrow was no longer bound by dreams. He walked on Hollow Creek's roads. Streetlights flickered out as he passed. His voice, when he spoke, entered through the ears of the forgotten, the homeless, the isolated, the elderly, the misremembered. He whispered, "Come home, be seen." And they followed, into the woods, into the soil, into the spiral. By the end of the week, 40 people were gone. Only Lena and Ellis seemed to remember them. Everyone else's memories had been rewritten. Ellis, now partially bound to the spiral, could feel its pulse through the walls. "I don't think we're in Hollow Creek anymore," he said. Lena agreed. "We're in the in-between." From the attic, a low moan echoed. They climbed the stairs. The attic door opened by itself. Inside, a crib. In the crib, a bundle of cloth. They approached carefully. Lena reached out and unwrapped it. Inside was a mirror shard. It showed her own face, twisted into the spiral. Beneath it, a note in old script. "To become the anchor, One must be loved and left behind. Ellis remembered the story. Elijah Harrow hadn't created the spiral. His son had. Jonas was born blind, voiceless, his mind awake even in the womb. He saw the world from the inside out. He imagined a better one, where no one was alone, no one forgotten, where everyone was part of something bigger. That world became the spiral. Elijah, terrified of his son's mind, tried to bind him in ritual. But that only made Jonas stronger. He didn't want worship, he wanted company. As Lena and Ellis turned to leave the Harrow house, the walls melted into shadow. Jonas stepped forward from the black, now tall, his skin a canvas of faces. "I don't want to hurt anyone," he said. "You're destroying them," Lena spat. "I'm saving them," Jonas replied, "from being alone, from being forgotten." He extended a hand. "Join me, and I'll let the others go." Ellis hesitated. Lena shook her head. "There has to be another way." Jonas smiled. "There's not." And behind him, 1,000 voices whispered, "Remember me. Say my name. Don't let me go." Ellis took a step forward. "What if I stay?" he said. "Let her go. Let them all go." Jonas's eyes sparkled, tiny spirals spinning in each pupil. "You would give yourself to me?" Ellis nodded. "If it means the end of this." Jonas opened his arms. Lena screamed, "No!" but it was too late. Ellis walked into him, into the spiral, and the house collapsed. Lena was thrown into the field below. She woke up surrounded by people. The returned, Brooke, Mason, Pastor Jim, all staring at her, all alive. But Ellis was gone. Ellis awoke inside the spiral, not in the twisted city or crumbling tower, but in something worse, a void shaped like a child's dream. He stood on a black plain under a rotting sky. Above him, glowing like constellations, hung thousands of faces, all people who had disappeared, staring blankly, mouths sewn shut with wire. Their eyes followed him. Ellis tried to move, but the ground was sticky, not with tar, but with memory. Every step he took echoed with his past. Rachel's laughter, his parents calling his name, Lena's voice whispering, "Come back." He was in Jonas's core now. He was part of it. Lena sat in her room in Hollow Creek, staring at a mirror she hadn't dared cover. She'd burned the Harrow book. She'd crushed the shard of glass Ellis had first appeared in. Still, at night, her dreams were filled with spirals and whispers. People had returned. Pastor Jim, Brooke, Mason. But they were different. Too quiet. Too perfect. When she asked them about the spiral, their eyes flickered. "I don't remember," they'd say. But when she turned away, she'd hear them murmur, "It's still turning. He's still watching. Ellis is the spiral now." Ellis wandered the void for what felt like days, weeks. Time didn't move here. He found a mirror floating in the dark, reflecting Hollow Creek in reverse. Houses upside down, people walking backwards, dogs barking silently. When he touched the mirror, he felt pain, not his own, Lena's. She had started to forget his face. Each time she remembered him, he was strong. Each time she doubted, he flickered. Ellis understood then. The spiral wasn't feeding on the forgotten. It fed on remembrance. The more Lena remembered, the more power Jonas had to keep Ellis alive, but trapped. Lena began hearing voices. They came from behind walls, inside vents, from mirrors left too long uncovered. Not screams, whispers, names. Some she knew, Some she didn't, all of them begging. Tell them I lived. Write me down. Say my name. She began writing names on her walls, her ceiling, her windows. The more she wrote, the more the whispers faded. But one name she didn't write. Ellis. Because she couldn't decide if remembering him was saving him or feeding the spiral. In the spiral's heart, Ellis finally met Jonas again. The boy was seated on a throne made of teeth and torn-out diary pages. I thought this was peace, Ellis said. You promised to let them go. I did, Jonas replied. They're safe. You're the price. I can live with that. Jonas smiled sadly. You don't live in here, Ellis. You become. Jonas reached into Ellis's chest and pulled out a flickering image. Lena. She's still tethered, Jonas whispered. She still believes in you. Good. No, Jonas said. Bad. It means you're not mine yet. He crushed the image. Back in Hollow Creek, people started vanishing again. Not into thin air, but into silence. Pastor Jim walked into his church one morning and never walked out. His congregation saw him for days afterward, but he didn't respond, didn't speak, didn't blink. Then, one day, he was just gone. Not dead, not missing, erased. Only Lena remembered. And now she was the only one who remembered Ellis. Desperate, Lena began to write a book. Not a diary, a ledger. She titled it, The Ones Who Were. She filled its pages with names, faces, stories, birthdays, favorite foods, last known words. Each page made her feel like she was pulling them backward, away from the spiral. But the more she wrote, the more her own memories frayed. One morning, she couldn't remember her mother's face. That night, she forgot how Ellis smelled, but she kept writing. And in the spiral, Ellis felt a tug, like a hook pulling him up. He screamed her name. For the first time, she heard it clearly. There was one page left in Lena's book. She'd been saving it. Now she opened it. She wrote, Ellis Mark Taylor, born 1989, cousin of Rachel, who vanished, seeker of the spiral, gave himself to save us. I loved him. I remember him. And as she wrote the final word, her house shuddered. Mirrors across Hollow Creek shattered. Windows cracked into spirals. And in the black sky above, a figure began to fall. Ellis fell through the clouds like a comet, fire and memory trailing behind him. He struck the center of town, a crater forming instantly. People gathered, and from the smoke he stood, eyes wide, breathing, alive. He looked at Lena, bleeding from her hands, her hair white at the roots. Did I do it? He asked. Lena smiled. You did. But behind her, the shadows moved, and from the spiral's remnants, Jonas whispered one last word. Not yet. Hollow Creek tried to forget again. After Ellis returned, people called it a miracle. A few whispered about angels. Most assumed he'd been lost in the woods. But Lena saw the signs creeping back in. Dust spiraling on untouched windowsills. Children drawing circles over and over, claiming it was a friend. People forgetting names mid-sentence. And worst of all, mirrors refused to reflect properly. She watched Ellis sleep one night. His breath rose steady. But in the mirror on the dresser behind him, he wasn't sleeping at all. He was smiling. Rachel's old bedroom remained untouched since she disappeared. Ellis found it hard to enter, even now. But one night, something pulled him inside. He sat on the edge of her bed. Something creaked below. He pried open a loose floorboard. There, wrapped in cloth, was a journal. Rachel's. Its pages were filled with drawings of spirals, glass corridors, mouths sewn shut. But in the back were 4 words written in blood. Jonas was not first. And beneath that, look beneath the asylum. The Hollow Creek Asylum had been closed since 1962. Too many disappearances, Lena said, staring up at the rust-stained building. They said the patients escaped, Ellis muttered, but none were ever found. The front door fell open with a whisper. Inside, silence clung to the air like rot. On the lower levels, they found padded rooms still bearing scratch marks. But the basement held something else. A hidden staircase. It led to stone older than the building itself. Symbols carved deep into the rock. One of them was the spiral, but another was a handprint with no fingers. At the bottom of the stairs lay a chamber filled with mirrors. Dozens of them, each cracked, but not broken. Each reflected a different scene, not in real time, but from different lives. Lena stepped in front of one. She saw a girl in 1879 being buried alive beneath a church. Another mirror showed a man in 1924 hanging from a tree, his face stitched shut. Another showed Jonas, but as a toddler, staring into a mirror that blinked at him. "They're not memories," Ellis whispered. "They're traps." "They're feeding it," Lena said. "Feeding what?" From behind them, a voice rasped. "The first forgotten." A figure stood in the corner. Thin, towering, face hidden by a veil stitched with teeth. It moved without moving. "We thought Jonas created it," Ellis whispered, but Lena was shaking her head. "No, he was a vessel." The figure stepped closer. The spiral was born from the first who was erased, the first cast out, the one no one remembered. Its voice echoed inside their bones. "I was the first," it said. "Before time kept names, before stories were told, I was buried beneath memory." Lena raised the journal. "But Rachel found you." "She remembered," the figure hissed. "So I took her first." The mother offered a deal. "Give me a name that means something to you," she whispered, "and I'll end this forever." No more vanishing, no more spiral. Lena stepped forward. Ellis grabbed her arm. "Don't. If I give her mine, it's over. You don't know that. She took Rachel. She took Jonas. What if this ends it?" Lena looked into the figure's veil and saw herself slowly being unwritten, smiling in family photos that no longer existed. Ellis looked away. "There has to be another way." "I remember you," Lena said softly, "and I always will." Then she said her name aloud and gave it away. The mirrors shattered. The chamber groaned. The spiral carved in the stone unraveled. And Lena gasped. She stepped back. Ellis was staring at her, confused. "Who are you?" he asked. She opened her mouth, paused. I don't remember." He stepped toward her. "Wait." But she was already fading, her hands transparent, her voice slipping from the air like vapor. He reached for her, but she vanished. Not in a scream, not in a flash, just gone. No one in Hollow Creek remembered her name again. The next morning, the town was quiet, peaceful, No spirals, no disappearances, no whispers. The spiral was gone. People smiled again. Dogs barked, windows reflected. But Ellis sat alone in Rachel's room, holding the torn journal, reading the last page. A name had been scratched out violently, but he remembered it, Lena. And because he remembered, something stirred. A whisper in the walls, a ripple in the mirror. The spiral needed her to be forgotten. But Ellis remembered, and so the spiral stirred again. Hollow Creek was healed. At least that's what they said. The spiral was gone. The disappearances had stopped. People remembered birthdays. Their reflections moved the way they should. But something felt hollow. Lena's house sat dark, overgrown. No one noticed, not even her parents, not even the mirror in her room, still covered in fingerprints shaped like spirals. Only Ellis remembered. He carried her name like a splinter in his mind, the last trace of her presence. And it was hurting him, because the spiral wasn't dead. It was waiting. It started slowly. Ellis would close his eyes and see her, Lena, standing in fog, mouth moving without sound. Then the dreams began, spiral corridors of bone, whispering voices without faces, and always at the center, Lena's journal, open and unfinished. One morning, Ellis woke up with words carved into his forearm. You remembered. He didn't do it, but something else had. That day, Ellis went back to the asylum ruins. Only rubble remained, but the spiral had moved. It was inside him now. He returned to Rachel's room. The journal was gone. In its place, a single shard of black glass rested under her pillow. Ellis touched it, and reality buckled. For an instant, he wasn't in the room. He stood in a hallway of mirrors, all pulsing like veins. Each one showed Lena, but slightly different, smiling, screaming, reaching, burning. He pulled his hand away. The glass whispered, "She is not gone. She is changed. You made her remember. So she remembers everything." That night, the lights in town flickered. Dogs howled. Every child in Hollow Creek awoke from the same dream. A girl standing in the fog, holding a burning book, her mouth sewn shut, her eyes bleeding mirrors. Ellis knew what it meant. Lena was still somewhere, but the spiral had twisted her. She hadn't been erased. She had been reborn. There was one place left untouched, the old well behind the church. Locals said it was older than the town, that it had been sealed with iron and salt. Ellis returned with the shard. He dropped it into the well. The ground trembled, stone cracked. The well opened, and a staircase of mirrors descended beneath. At the bottom, he found what he feared. Not the spiral, not Jonas, but Lena. She stood in a chamber of absolute silence. Her face was pale, her hair silver, her eyes two pools of shifting reflections. "Lena," he breathed. She looked at him, then tilted her head. "I remember you." He stepped forward. "You don't have to stay here. We can end this. You're still you." "No," she whispered. "I'm what happens when someone remembers too much." She raised her hand. The walls pulsed. 1,000 voices screamed from the mirrors. "Every forgotten soul," she said. "I feel them now. I carry them. I am the spiral. E." "No, you're Lena." "I was." She held out a shard of glass. "You can stay. You can remember with me. keep me whole. Or, she turned, I erase you, and everything ends. Truly. Peace, silence, oblivion. Ellis hesitated. If he stayed, he'd be bound forever, a guardian of memory, like her. If he left, she would destroy the last person who remembered, and the spiral would die with her. No one should carry this, she said. No one should remember all of them. Ellis took her hand. You won't be alone. And the spiral pulsed one final time. The next day, Hollow Creek was different. Quieter, calmer, but also colder. The air felt still, like something had gone out. No one remembered Lena. No one remembered Ellis. But 2 new gravestones appeared in the old churchyard, side by side. One read, her name was Lena. She remembered, and she was never alone. 23 years had passed. Hollow Creek was no longer small. It had grown. Suburbs now fringed the woods. New houses pushed into places that were once avoided. No one remembered the spiral. Not Lena, not Ellis, not the well behind the church. The asylum had been flattened. A mall stood in its place. But deep beneath the mall's food court, in the cement they poured over old stone, something moved. It pulsed, and it waited. 7-year-old Iris Barlow was always quiet. She didn't like sunlight or loud noises. She liked mirrors. She talked to them sometimes, and she drew. Circles mostly, spirals. At first, her parents didn't think much of it. But then she started drawing 2 people in the middle of every spiral. A woman with silver hair. A man with letters carved into his skin. Iris, her mother asked. Her mother smiled uneasily. Why are they in all your drawings? Iris looked at the mirror behind her mother. They're coming back. Across Hollow Creek, small things began to go wrong. Mirrors fogged even when it wasn't humid. People forgot where they parked. Names slipped from tongues. And the spiral symbols began to appear again. Carved into trees, scrawled in alleyways, even inside elevator buttons at the mall. An old librarian named Ms. Cardew found one carved into a returned book. She flipped it open and saw her own obituary written inside. 3 days later, she vanished. Only Iris remembered her. One night, Iris's father caught her talking to the hallway mirror. Except this time, something talked back. He heard it, not a reflection, but a voice. Soft, fractured, familiar. Ellis, it whispered. The next morning, he shattered every mirror in the house. But Iris cried. You made her mad, she said. Now she has to come out. They called her a ghost at first. Teenagers dared each other to visit the woods at night, where a silver-haired woman wandered without a sound. One night, someone filmed her. The video lasted 6 seconds. At frame 4, every mirror in the house where it was watched cracked. By frame 6, the boy who filmed it had forgotten his own name. Iris watched it a dozen times and smiled. She's close, she said, but she's looking for him. Ellis didn't stay buried. Something had tethered him to Hollow Creek. He began to appear in digital noise, in corrupted phone recordings, in grain. Security guards in the mall reported a flickering shape in CCTV footage, a man with symbols carved into his arms, always standing near mirrored surfaces. People began forgetting parts of their own reflection. First a nose, then an eye, then entire faces. Ellis was not himself anymore. He had become the echo. And he was looking for Lena. The spiral was no longer just a symbol. It was a wound, an opening between memory and oblivion. It began appearing in architecture, unnoticed at first. Ramps curving too smoothly, staircases that looped, and then someone discovered an impossible hallway in the mall's basement. It spiraled downward, endlessly. Inside it, time slipped. People entered and came out days later, missing fingernails, muttering names no one recognized. At the center of the spiral hallway was a child's drawing. It was signed simply Iris. Iris led her parents one night to an abandoned service corridor behind the theater. She pressed her hand to a blank wall, and it opened. Behind it, a room full of mirrors. None of them showed the present. They showed Ellis, Lena, Rachel, even Jonas. Frozen moments of their lives. Why did you bring me back? Iris smiled. Because you saved Hollow Creek. Lena touched the glass. No, I condemned it. Ellis's voice came from a mirror beside hers. We can't be apart. The spiral is us now. It's what's left when memory burns. The mirrors began to shake. Reality splintered. Iris turned to her mother. She's coming out now. The mall collapsed that night. An unexplained explosion. No survivors found. Only a spiral crater burning faintly at the center. And standing in it, a woman with silver hair, holding the hand of a child. All mirrors within 50 miles warped that week. People began forgetting how to forget. And in Hollow Creek, the spiral had returned, not as a curse, not as a wound, but as a child born from memory and grief.